Let's jump right into it. So thanks everybody for attending episode 23 in our series of Let's Talk Recruiting. Appreciate everybody coming in and participating. It's been going really good so far. We're about to start scheduling out our sessions for Q3. Today we're going to stick to our time of 30 minutes. Some of these typically go over, but our panelists today have some hard stops. So we're going to stick to the calendar so everybody can get back to work. And as usual, we have representation from across the country. We have Pam Koenig from New York City, Julie Kemp from the San Francisco Bay Area, Rachel Kraska from Chicago, and Ed Frankel from New York City. And of course, I'm down in Southern California in the Los Angeles area. Today's topic, 5 tricks to managing your hiring managers. So I think everybody knows that every hiring manager is a unique entity in and of themselves. So each relationship is one by one. So today we're going to get some tips and insights from our panelists, and we're just going to do a round table and see what the key items that are coming in from our panelists. So Pam, I am going to start with you. I'm going to turn it over to you and to see what item you want to highlight today.
Sure. I want to highlight creative ways to keep the process going and keep their interest and keep the communication open. So whether that's, being unique with your subject line of an email, something that's catchy that will get them to open up your email, whether it's the first line of the email, if I'm submitting a candidate that has a great skill that I know I want to catch their attention. Again, I might put that in the subject line. I might put that in the beginning of the email in all caps, underline, really try to sell them the best way that I can to get their attention. And also to just, remind the hiring manager kind of along the way that we're there to help them, but we need their help as well. So, things like that. I mean, I was told the other day by a hiring manager that he doesn't want to be rushed. Meanwhile, I was within his time frame of doing things. So, then you're trying to figure out how to keep the balance with not being too pushy, like he doesn't want to be pushed, but you're also, you've got candidates who are waiting to hear back, especially in this market where they're excited about an opportunity. So just, really trying to keep the communication open with the hiring manager.
Hey, Pam, do you ever give deadlines for responses from your hiring managers? Like, hey, you have 48 hours to respond, otherwise I'm going to let the candidate go, so to speak?
I'm trying to think. I mean, I will say they have, and if it's the truth, I'll say they have other opportunities and we really need to know. I won't say it if it's not true, but in this case, I got a response saying, I don't like to be rushed. And I was like, okay, you might lose those people. And now you've passed your deadline of what you told us. So no, I won't do that. I won't say you've got 48 hours, but if they ghost me, if they go dark, then I might say that. Like if I don't hear from you by tomorrow morning. We call it like a kill email that we send out where we're basically killing the job. We're saying we haven't heard from you. If if we don't hear within 24 hours, we'll assume this job is closed. If it is in fact an urgent need, please reach out and we'll reevaluate.
Interesting. How about the other panelists around getting that manager's time and sort of kind of in addition to that? And I haven't seen too many recruiters give these deadlines from the jump. See it every now and then. I did see, this was years ago, I love the way this one recruiter did it, is he would book time on calendar every week for booking his interviews. And if they were not able to book those interviews 48 hours prior to that time, the manager gets his time back. So it's almost like he's trying to stay ahead of the game and getting that commitment. I don't know how many hiring managers he got to do it for him, but I thought it was a very interesting idea. So to the other panelists, kind of around getting that manager's attention. Any thoughts on what Pam was saying?
Yeah, I mean, if we're working with hi, Sean, thanks for having us here. I think if we're working with a hiring manager, we're in process and they just disappear. All the recruiters that I work with, we all have like a license to nudge. Like, hey, I'm checking in. Is this search still a priority? I've got this candidate. I'm waiting on feedback, or I haven't heard from you to confirm the details of the job description. If after you've nudged a couple of times, they're not getting back, it's funny, I've never heard it called the kill email, but we'll say something like, hey, we're ready to make the search happen when you are. Give us a call, but until then, we'll put it on hold. Because in my organization, when you put a job on hold equals closed. So to kick a search back off again takes a little bit of muscle from the hiring team. So usually that either that provokes a reply like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Yes, I do want to connect and talk about it," or "Yeah, maybe this isn't a priority." And then occasionally they just don't write back at all. That's the exception though. But we could definitely nudge. Nudging is permitted because, like you said, the candidates likely have other opportunities they're chasing.
And especially now, just to be fair to them, they're getting, I mean, a lot of people are unemployed. So when you call them about a job, they get excited. They're, hopeful. And just to leave them hanging, like I'm big about putting myself in the candidate's shoes. And I know that I would not like that done to me. So to stay on top of the hiring manager. But you know what, you're right. When we send what we consider a kill or a suspending search email, that's after they haven't gotten in touch with us. It usually gets a response of some kind, even if it's we're the job's on hold, but at least we have closure.
Is it safe to say that a non-responsive hiring manager is something that's kind of rare? It's not like an ongoing issue, or is it happening all the time in your areas?
It's rare over in my area. We have about a 225 person company and 2 recruiters. So their resources are limited in us, and no one wants to go down to the bottom of the priority list. And if you're unresponsive, you land down at the bottom of the we're not going to work on your job list. So it helps it helps keep them moving. Everyone knows that.
Got it. Interesting.
And I think bottom line, you have to be their subject matter expert when it comes to recruiting and help them understand, what that candidate is feeling, and help them really see why their attention to this is really going to help them grow.
Excellent. All right, Julie, on that note, we're going to kind of jump over to your item if you want to speak on your topic.
Yeah, and I think this really speaks to this. Is one of the most important tips I have with working with hiring managers is helping them think strategically about hiring and not just tactically. So when you can get them to more of a strategic mindset, a lot of the other issues start resolving themselves. My goal when I'm working with a hiring manager is really helping them be a better manager or leader, and helping them understand exactly how hiring can either make or break their team, really. So that means coming to them with data to back up my assertions, helping them see that I really am there to help build their team. And it also requires a fair amount of listening and asking probing questions. I want them to know that I am really interested in understanding their team goals, where their challenges lie, what gaps they see in their team, so I can help them with those gaps. Building the team really means looking for ways to make it stronger, and that's what we're here for. We're here to help them make their team stronger. And really, to be honest, the best leaders are talent magnets. So if I can show them that as a leader, they can be a talent magnet, they're going to be the ones that people follow and want to work for. And those are the people that get hired and promoted, actually. So,
Julie, do you do any official training to your managers, like let's say interview training? It's not just helping, but it's like designated as a class, so to speak. At your company?
Actually, I haven't done that yet here at Mercari, where I am right now, but I have developed hiring manager training at previous companies that really got into exactly how to partner with your recruiter, how to keep things moving forward, what they can do to help grow their team, and to really think more strategically about recruiting.
How about everybody else? Do you do any type of manager training when it comes to hiring and interviewing?
We offer, there's 2 things. We have something called the Art of the Interview training, which talks about how to interview. And in there, we talk about here's how we operate as a team, talk about bias in the process and whatnot. And then what we also do is anytime a search is approved and we're kicking off the search, the hiring manager gets an email from me saying, okay, so great news, your job was approved. Here are things you need to know. Here's the recruiter you're working with. Here are some rules of the road. Here are the ways that we normally find candidates. Here are things that you as a hiring manager should never talk about with your candidate, like salary, just setting some ground rules, some guardrails. And then from there, we have an intake meetings where the recruiter will likely repeat some of those things. But that's where I could see somebody put in the comments the idea of like this recruitment service agreement. It's where we all come to terms about how we're going to operate with each other. So we're trying to surround sound them with this is how we operate.
Excellent. Rachel, were you? I don't know if you're going to comment on there.
Oh, no, I'm good.
You good? Okay. All right. I'm still learning the Zoom when people are trying to get ready to speak. Yeah, the last company I was at with Universal Music is the recruiting team. They built out their own training, worked with the LOD team to put it into the LMS, and would make it available not only to the hiring managers, but also those trying to progress in their career. So it's kind of pushed within our own diversity program about not just if you're a hiring manager now, but if you're trying to get there, here's some training for you. So
yeah, and really, those weekly meetings that we have with our hiring managers, it's about coaching them and helping them see, what I'm thinking about when I'm looking at candidates, and also getting an understanding from them of what they look for so that we can come together and get the right people.
how about participating in team meetings? Like if you support, say, the tech group or the finance group, do you sit in on team meetings regardless of whether like it's designed to be reviewing openings?
I don't regularly, but I do on occasion. I don't know about anybody else.
Yeah, I think typically it's something like that comes down to time, right? Do you have the time to go do it? But I always see like some great results and great connections when those recruiters do have the time, or they do solely support like a specific business unit to be in those meetings.
I do definitely, though, always want to meet with the senior executive for the business unit to really understand their strategy about their organization. And then when I'm working with the hiring managers, I can help like build that strategy into our plans.
Got it. Does anybody, when they meet, send meeting recaps? There's an overwhelming theme of communication that was coming in from the audience when they signed up. Do you send meeting recaps to kind of emphasize the agreed upon items after you have your meetings?
Some people in our company will do that, and I find it very helpful. Like our salespeople, after taking down a job order, they'll just say, just to confirm, and they'll write it all out so that it's, in black and white. And then the client can respond, oh, and this or not this. And, we try to find out what's a must-have versus a nice-to-have. And then we really hone in is the nice-to-have really nice to have, or is it a must-have?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, and I don't know, Ed, how you feel, pharmaceutical, for example, they'll say to us, pharma's not really required. But then, is it really not really required? Because then when you send people who don't have it, you get the feedback, well, they don't have pharma. So, it is good to put it kind of in writing so that, you can say, but you told us this and now it's this. They are allowed to change their minds, but it's just helpful to have it in writing.
Excellent. Right. We'll keep the conversation moving. Let's jump over to Rachel. Do you want to sort of bring up the item that you have?
Sure. I wanted to talk about ensuring you have everything you need to get a role started and to have a fair interview process. So what I will be emphasizing is process and consistent documentation that we have all of our hiring managers do. So here at ShopRunner, where I work, it is a what we call an interview plan, which includes both who's going to be on the panel, what each person is going to be covering in their interview, so what they'll be looking for, as well as a list of what will make a candidate successful at the job at 30, 60, 90 days. So we'll ask for that, and we'll also ask for a job description. And that'll be required before I start any intake meeting. So that prevents that issue of the hiring manager saying, hey, I've got a friend I know, let's just get them into interview before you get a true process started.
When we say agreement, interofficial agreement, are we talking about like a signed document, or is this verbal communication?
I saw someone had a recruiting service agreement that was great. It's just official communication, and my company's so small that we know all the hiring managers, so it becomes ingrained in the culture where we are, and I have the support of the executives to do that and to be able to push back and say no if we don't have what we need as recruiters to start.
And are teams working off like templates or shared documents, or recruiters kind of get their panels? I did see one of the attendees asked if you'd be willing to share any templates or resources. I will leave that to each of you because I know things can be confidential and proprietary and things like that. But if anybody does want to make them available, just let me know. We can figure out a way to get it posted and things like that. But I do like to see like, hey, there's that standardization around it. That's always nice to see where people can, so because then you're not knowing, right? It's not up in the air to have those shared resources like that. Does anybody else sort of have any comments, other panelists, around having that defined and official process for the complete teams to be using?
Well, I think it's important. Rachel, I'm with you. Processes are critical because you don't want to have like you have your official position report and then you have the unofficial position report, right? I think this person might be leaving the organization, so can we start a search? And we've squashed that. Unless it's approved, it appears on this report, our OPR, our open position report, we can't work on it. We totally understand somebody might be leaving, but we have other roles that are open, that have been open, that are our critical priority. So process is important. It just makes sure that we're all setting fair expectations. It creates co-accountability. And then it helps your recruiters feel like you have their backs, right? Like, I'm following the process. This hiring manager isn't being forgiving. It's easier for then Rachel as a leader to go back and say, hey, hiring manager, this is the agreed to process, so give the recruiter a break.
Are we talking about having like defined SLAs, or are we just kind of talking more of an informal, formal process? Do any of your companies have like defined SLAs that can be referred to if necessary? Yeah.
Well, is it okay if I jump ahead to my thing, Sean?
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Sorry. I don't mean to hijack it here. So we kind of do. When a job is opened, we do a thing. I work in advertising, healthcare, pharmaceutical advertising. And so when we work with our clients, we won't start something without a brief. Like, what are we trying to accomplish? So we do the same thing with our hiring teams. We have a brief. What are the requirements? What are the nice to haves? Are there competitors that you think do this thing really well that we should focus in on? Who else has been in this role that's been successful, et cetera? Like, I love we don't directly say 30, 60, 90, but we do talk about like, what's the path this person is on? Is it a launch brand, et cetera? And that is a form that is in our system. We use iCIMS, and the recruiter fills that out during the intake meeting for a couple of reasons. It holds everybody accountable. I'm hearing you, I'm writing this down. If we switch things around, like, we don't have to go and do another intake meeting. Like, they just take the notes and the next recruiter can look at those notes. And then part of that sort of SLA is in that it says every Wednesday, sometimes it's Thursday, every Wednesday, we're going to send you an update. It goes back, somebody said it, forgive me, it might've been Julie, about communication, right? I think one of the keys to winning is
You froze there. I think he was going to say over communicate.
Here are your openings, and this is what's going on. The first one's the hardest. But then after that, you're just replying to that one and adding new information. And it holds everybody accountable. And it's okay if you don't have good news to share. It's okay to say, I don't have anybody new. I screened 3 candidates and none of them were a fit. Or, hey, you interviewed 3 people and I haven't gotten feedback from you yet. It's really critical. I'm not comfortable presenting more people until I know why you either want to proceed or pass on the ones you've met with. So, and people hold us accountable, because if somebody misses their update, somebody's gonna be like, wait, where was my update from recruiting? And usually we'll hear about that. And it's, somebody was on vacation or whatever. But that process, that SLA, the intake, the over communication, that's how you keep your hiring managers from saying things like recruiting is a black hole, or I never hear from recruiting, or my job's been open for 3 years. Well, every week you're getting an update, and then it's super helpful. I'd steal those ideas.
And there's a quick question about in iCIMS, if the intake form, is that living in iCIMS?
Yeah, so we took our hiring brief, we turned it, that Michelle's probably an iCIMS user, we turned it into an iForm, and it's in the requisition, so it's part of the requisition.
And when we talk about communications, are we talking about emails and meetings, or are we talking about posting within the ATS and there's an expectation that the managers are checking the ATS, which is rare if ever in my experience?
We've got both because like you said, it's some of my managers do check the ATS. So our form eventually ends up in the ATS to prepare them for their interview. But like we said, continuing the theme of over communication, I will try to have Slack, have an email, have an in-person meeting, and have something in our ATS's greenhouse, because hopefully that message will get out one way. I know it'll get out one way or the other if I cover all the channels. If we don't, we know someone's going to miss it.
There was a comment in the chat. I'm scrolling up a little bit here, kind of around the communication. I'm kind of jumping back, I think, to Pam's topics about when you do close out that rec. How are we having that how are we having the conversation with that manager after the rec just got closed, after they got that kill email and the rec got closed? What are those conversations like?
I mean, to me, the conversations, it's either in an email that we're closing the job if they choose not to respond. But if they come back around and say, oh, now I'm ready, it's really questioning, like, are you ready now? Because, what changed from last time to now? Like, is the budget approved? Is the project ready to go? Just kind of subtly reminding them that they blew you off last time and, you want to take it seriously now. Again, there's candidates on the line for this, your time, so going over nicely what happened in the past and what's different now.
And I get really frank and say, hey, look, I appreciate that you're really busy. I know that you have a ton of things on your plate, but I've got to be able to commit the time and know that when I talk to a candidate, I'm being authentic with them. And I know that I can make sure that they get through the process. And so, hopefully that sets them up to understand that I really am thinking about their needs as well as the candidates.
It's always a good lesson too. I hate when it happens, but if you get one who finally loses a candidate because of their lack of hustle, it's a great lesson that lasts for a long time and very painful for the recruiter.
So let me ask you a question, because we talk about being a SME, about being about that consultant and the communication. What if you're a younger recruiter and you need to go have that direct conversation with the director or VP in a business unit? Any suggestions or thoughts around somebody who isn't as experienced as our group, let's say? Like, let's say you have 4 years or less, and you're new to a company, and you got to go have that direct conversation because you are being taken for granted. And I have no idea what the answer to this question is, but I'm going to ask you guys. What are some good ways to do that? I was brought into recruiting is always ignore someone's title. They have their job, do you do yours, and take that approach. That worked for me because you still speak professionally. But around that young person who may be a little bit nervous about walking into that VP's office to kind of tell them, hey, you blew me off last time, we can't have that again. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I would always say, first off, make sure you have some data to back up your assertions. Really make sure that you can come to them and say, look, I presented 10 people, we've gotten no response, or you've rejected 10 people, I can't keep going forward. And then, when I've had instances where I've really broken it down into man hours, how many hours of time it is taking to get someone through a process so that they can really understand the impact. I do a lot of technical recruiting, and in engineering, they really focus on engineering man hours for projects. And so when you can really break it down to how many hours of time it takes to review resumes, do phone screen, do technical review, and bring them on site, and that's 5 hours of your engineer's time, and really draw that out, that really helps them understand. So the more data you can get.
Yeah, we set baselines as well where we're able, to look at our past jobs and say, oh, it takes an average of 12 people for us to interview and to bring you 6 and to have you get 3 on site to make a hire. And then we can really push back if someone's running, a less experienced recruiter around and they've suddenly interviewed 25 people. We can work together to get to the bottom of that. Is it that the recruiter doesn't understand the job, or that the hiring manager doesn't understand the job?
Yeah. I mean, one of the tactics, so the weekly email that the recruiters are sending, their manager and I are CC'd. So it's our responsibility to read those. And if we're seeing something like, wait, this is 2 weeks in a row where Julie has asked for feedback and isn't getting it, that's where my role as a manager or leader comes in to say, maybe just one-on-one with the recruiter first to verify everything. And then the hiring manager, like, hey, you're not helping Julie out here. What's going on? So that's another way the weekly email helps. It really does create co-accountability between all of us that are involved in the process.
And I think that would help, Sean, your question about juniors, having someone like Ed on your side, knowing that they'll stick up for you and they'll speak to the executive and they'll speak to the hiring manager. Just at least that would make me feel better if I was young in the seat, knowing that I'm not alone.
Right. Yeah. Like your approach to coach before stepping in, right? Almost, would you sort of say like that?
Yeah, I won't go in blind. I'm going to make sure I know what I'm talking about.
No, I mean, before you go in or step in, you coach that recruiter to kind of manage the situation on their end. And if it's not done, then you step in, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so we're getting close to the half hour. I did want to comment on the information or the suggestions that we got from the attendees. There was an overwhelming theme of communication often. I think that kind of came out in our conversations. The setting expectations was sort of the next most popular one. We got into that with process and agreements. And the other one was sort of, the other big bucket was that partner relationship, kind of to Julie's point about being SB and what have you. I did want to highlight 3 specific ones because I thought they were excellent takeaways that anybody can go do today. And one of them was always try to get their cell number. Do you have all your manager cell numbers?
That was something that I said, because I'm able to text from my database, and I do find that they're a little shocked sometimes if like all of a sudden they're getting a text from me, but they've given us their number, so it's it's okay, and I tend to get a response.
Well, that's cheating, Pam. That was supposed to come from an attendee.
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
don't know how you got your name in there.
I'm sorry. I thought I said something about a cell number to you. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. So one of the attendees when the register had it. Another one, so that to me is like an instant takeaway. Another one was bring them a coffee unexpectedly, cup of coffee. Okay, that's a nice way to get in with your managers. I like that. And then another one that I really liked that I want to call out is always use at least one of their suggestions so they feel heard. So a takeaway from the meeting is always to cover that. I thought that was sort of an excellent point to build that bond with your managers. So those I thought were 3 easy to do takeaways that anybody can use this afternoon going forward. All right. Again, sticking to the 30-minute mark here today. Any last closing comments that anybody wants to add in there? I know it's kind of like you got to, I said it at the beginning, is you got to win each manager over one by one, and then your reputation gets out there, and I think the next one gets easier, but you still got to win it. Any closing comments or anything like that from anybody?
I think if you can get up and talk to them is always just always a good piece of advice. If you're in a small enough organization where they're sitting in your office.
Anybody
in an office, right?
Right. In the old days.
And Slack.
Yeah. I'm going to give a plug for Sean that he's turning all of these into podcasts, which I just learned today. So,
oh, thank you very much.
Go find Sean's podcasts on. I just subscribed right before this started. I went on Apple Podcasts. I typed Sean Rader, and there it was. So I've subscribed. Thanks, Sean.
Well, thank you. I'm trying to disseminate as much information as I can in every different way. I was talking to Ed earlier. I'm learning these little tools, so I'm learning things outside of recruiting and stuff like that. Julie or Pam, any last items to add?
I would just say like consistency, having a lot of consistency in how you communicate, the message that you give so that they really know what to expect when they're going to be talking with you. Giving advice when you can and getting advice from them as needed.
Got it. And Pam?
No, just, to remember they need our help. They don't always realize it, but they do need our help as well. And I think sometimes recruiters, it's not that we're taken advantage of, but they, I don't know that they take us seriously, but they need us to help them as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm ending on time today. Enjoy the rest of your days. Pam, congratulations on your daughter's graduation. Enjoy. And I will talk to everybody soon. Thanks, everybody.
Sean, be well.
Bye-bye.